Okay, cracking on. We're cooking on gas here. We're full steam ahead, one after another. It's really, really exciting stuff. So thank you for sticking around. Oksana will be back in a moment on the panel, as well as our next speaker, Som. Total Jobs Group, Stepstone and Total Jobs Group is doing some really interesting stuff in the conversational AI space, using conversational AI to help with people's job search. And so please welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gents, the head of product for conversations at Stepstone and Total Jobs Group, Somnath Biswas.
Thank you, Kane. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. I'm conscious that most of you might not have heard of Stepstone. So, if you've heard of brands like Total Jobs or JobSite, those are the kind of job boards that we have. So we own around 40 odd job portals across UK and Europe and US. And we're obviously in the business of finding the right job for you. So we are a job board where enterprises would kind of advertise, and then the candidates are coming to kind of find the right jobs. And today what I'm going to talk to you about is how we went about building our job search companion. My goal for the next 20 minutes is, by the end of this talk, I should have told you about why did we actually start off with the conversational experience, because we've had 40 job boards, they are doing well. So why the pivot to, or why the move towards conversational experience? Did the users even want to kind of talk to us? Because we all want to go down the route of conversational AI, etc. But do the users want it? And if so, what do they want to talk to us about? Is it possible to scale it? We talk about technology, we talk about aspects, but are there quality aspects that kind of come into the picture? And then what does the future look like for us? So these are my goals. Let's see how I do with that. So first things first is probably just taking a step back. And I just want to kind of emphasize this point that when it comes down to a job search, an online job search, compared to most other conversational experiences or most other online experiences, it's a very different experience, and I'll tell you why. So just to kind of prove a point, let's assume that you're kind of trying to buy a bottle of Coke, just as an extreme example. Compare that with a job search. When you are actually there applying for a job, the size of the transaction is phenomenally high. So imagine buying something online versus applying for a job, and if you do get the job, the impact that will have on your life is phenomenally high. So therefore, there's a lot at stake, there's a lot of emotion involved, there's a lot of anxiety to it. Second is, when you're buying something online, you might think about questions in terms of, should I buy it, can I afford it, but never does the question pop up in terms of, am I good enough? So there's a lot of self-doubt, self-evaluation that kind of comes in when you're doing a job search. Second is, the supplier will never judge you. So a Tesco or someone else or Amazon will never judge you for buying something, they would prefer it, but here you are constantly thinking, I'm going to get judged, should I go for it, what does it mean for me? More often than not, you will never have to kind of come back and try it again. So think about going to Amazon and saying, I want to buy a bottle of Coke, and they're going to say, okay, we've got a number of people who want to buy a bottle of Coke, come back after a few years or a few days, and we want to basically think about it. That doesn't happen. The probability of being disappointed is rarely super high. But when it comes down to a job search, more often than not, it will end up with a disappointment. So there is, again, a lot of emotion involved from that perspective. So when you're talking about job search, it's incredibly stressful. It requires multiple attempts. There's a lot of patience. There's a lot of perseverance that is involved in that. It will impact your life if you're successful. Otherwise as well, it will more often than not end up in a disappointment. That one cycle will end up in a disappointment. And it's a very, very lonely activity. So this is essentially what you're trying to deal with from a customer experience perspective. So our thought process was, because it has so much involvement from an emotion perspective, there is an element of it being lonely, why not think from a job search companion aspect? And at this stage, we weren't even thinking conversation. We were basically saying, how can we make the experience more of a companion experience? So this is the vision that we started off with, which basically was, Stepstone would be my trusted job search companion, knows me, brings me the best jobs, makes it all easy, and I feel that Stepstone is always there and cares for my success. So this is the vision for all our B2C customer products. And What we did is, okay, we said, okay, let's take a step back. Let's talk about building trust. Let's talk about making it easy. Let's talk about the element of care. And most of you would kind of realize that when you're talking about these things usually would happen in a conversation. So that's where the idea kind of came in terms of why not try, once we are doing what we're doing and we're doing it well, why not try the aspect of conversational experience? And that's where we kind of embarked on the journey. But as I said, we weren't sure whether the users actually want to chat with us. So we were all excited. Hey, NLP, most of us kind of come with background, startup experiences, blah, blah, blah. But do the users really want to do it? If so, what do they want to talk to us about? Are we even able to generate value for the user during this process? Are we able to generate value for the company in this process? And are we able to do it at scale? Now, these were a number of open questions that we started off with. And so one of the first things we did was, typical process, we go from the known to the unknown. So we said, okay, fine, why don't we start off small? And we actually started off with a human-to-human chat. It was the easiest way to kind of get an answer to these questions, because if you see, none of these questions actually involves the AI element. Maybe the last one, but none of these other questions involve the AI element. So before even we kind of went down the AI route, we said, let's start off with a human-to-human chat. Very easy to kind of put, we kind of borrowed some colleagues from our customer service, gave them a very brief training, start of the process, so that we could actually kind of start seeing what the customers were looking for, what kind of data we were getting. So we went through, I think, around 2-3 months of a cycle where we kind of, we enhanced the dashboard, we got some data points going. And the result from that was, and I'll talk about the metrics, but one of the key learnings, and this was a big one for us, was when we started off with the human-to-human, one of our first ideas was, okay, here's a call, typical, you have a call sheet, so we basically told them, someone's going to come and chat with you about a job search, ask them these data points, blah, 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 follow this pattern, etc., etc. Total disaster. Because what happens is, once you can ask a bot to do something, a human has a mind of his or her own, and so therefore none of the agents were actually following the call scripts. Everyone had a different style. And that's where the realization came in that we were actually trying to force fit a solution. So we said, okay, take a step back, 180 degrees. We said, these are the goals that you have to achieve. So almost things like, policy management, if you're thinking in terms of models, this is a reinforcement learning exercise. We are basically saying, these are the goals, you define the policy and you get the data points. So from that perspective, the agents actually, we kind of gave them the goals. That's when they started trying out different things, and that's where we learned from them what the conversation flow should be. So that was one element of learning. Second, I think it got mentioned a couple of times during the various other sessions as well. Personalization was a huge factor when it came down to performance. So initially we were kind of, even in terms of chat uptake, we were basically looking at, a very low single digits. The moment we personalized it, so in the sense that even in your chat prompt, it did not start off with, hi, I can help you with a job search. It started with, hi, Som, I know you're looking for a product role in London. Is that what you're looking for? I can help with that. The moment you make it personalized, we saw a straight jump to high double digits. So personalization at any point in your conversation, it's obviously always a positive if you can drive it with the element of data. In terms of our uptake, as I mentioned, we kind of hit double digits. Now, at this stage, keep in mind, just for the product folks, what the exercise we're doing is basically we're trying to achieve a product market fit. So we kind of, towards product market fit test, we defined our North Stars, and our North Stars were the LTV, lifetime value, how much of an uplift can we generate towards generating value for the company, and how much impact can we have on the CSAT. And without going into the numbers at this point, and without, keep in mind, this is just initial 2-3 months of experimentation just to kind of see whether there's value. We actually saw a significant uplift in the lifetime value, and we saw a fairly high CSAT in the higher ranges. So what it kind of told us was that there is something over here. But we realized very quickly, as obvious, scale is expensive. You can only do it with a few number of agents, and you can only do it during the office hours. But the other thing that obviously the learning we were looking for is, do people want to talk to us, and about what? So the numbers indicated, yes, they want to talk to us about, and we had by this point a good handle on what the topics were. Majority of it at this stage was job search. There were a few who wanted apply assistance, and then there are a few who wanted kind of help with other things in terms of immigration and other pieces. But nevertheless, we got to the point, the goal of the experiment was essentially getting answer to those questions, and at this point we had enough data to kind of say, yes, there is something in a conversational experience, so let's take the next step and let's try and see if we can scale it up. This is where we obviously kind of went for the AI chatbot. We in the stage, we kind of used Microsoft Lewis and the Microsoft Bot Framework and the Q&A Maker. And we had the learnings in terms of the conversational flows. We had the learnings in terms of the kind of use cases. We had a few yellow doors set up as well to kind of get a sense of other topics. But this kind of obviously comes with its own set of questions. So human to human, some things don't come in, biases don't come in. But over here again, the question was, do people actually want to chat with the bot? Do the questions change? Does the topic change? And again, the same questions of product market fit. So again, the learnings from the chatbot that we had was when you are kind of pursuing your normal positive scenarios in terms of, I'm looking for this job, fill up, give me this information, and I'll give you a final result. A bot probably is good, but it's not necessary because the same thing can happen over a web page, the same thing can happen over a form. Why do you need to build a bot for that? A chatbot kind of comes in handy when you're pursuing the no scenarios, in the sense, based on what you've given me, these are the job listings that I have. If you don't like, tell me which you don't like, and then I will work on this. So pursuing the no scenarios is essentially where the benefit of the chatbot comes in. Second thing we realized is the topic split actually changed with the bot, precisely for two reasons. So previously, where we had majority of it was job search and a little bit of apply and a little bit of other topics. Now what happened is, because the users were very easily or very quickly able to get the job search information, they finished that and started going on to the apply. So apply became a significant part of the conversation, and they went to the other topics. The second reason was that now we were able to provide 24/7. So suddenly you have a different user persona coming in. So people who kind of are chatting with the bot outside office hours, slightly different personalities, slightly different requirements compared to during the office hours. So we saw a couple of changes happen, but in terms of again numbers, again containment, not very containment again is basically a function of the training that you do. So it's not really a deciding factor, but containment in this case was basically industry averages. Our model accuracies were again fairly at par with the industry. We saw a higher LTV uplift compared with the bot because they were going through multiple cycles, and we also saw a higher CSAT. Now, a point to clarify over here is, just because I'm saying we saw a higher LTV and higher CSAT with the bot, that does not mean that the bot was better than the human chat. It means that essentially probably it might be that with a little bit of training on the human side, we could have achieved this as well. We were not building the human to human versus human to bot as a comparison. It was a learning experience in terms of sequential tasks. But what it did tell us is that you are able to scale it, you're able to at least get the same amount of quality from the bot as well, and essentially the topic split that we talked about, there was a learning over there. So effectively it answered the second question, which was, can you actually scale it up? Our learnings, just again from the human to human and human to bot perspective, first things first is, if you're trying to do a quick experiment, don't go down the technology route just yet. If you're talking conversational, our learning was quickly get to the market, put something out there, use a human to human, get your learnings, get your data points. It could be a positive, it could be a negative, but at least you prevented the negative with just starting out with the human to human. Second is, let the agents define the flow. The downside of a human to human is changes are difficult. It is very difficult to retrain someone to say, now try out this journey. Compared to that, a bot is much better or a lot quicker. The queue in chat wait times, I think we talked about, someone else talked about it. There's a lot of wait time, depends again a function of the capacity that you have. But again, with a bot, you're able to quickly take care of that. With a human to human chat, the tendency to go off topic is a lot higher compared to the bot. So when people are chatting with a human, they tend to kind of talk, and there's a lot more chit chat. With the bot, we actually were trying to get that emotional element and drive the chit chat, but more often than not, we actually saw people saw it very transactional. They're looking for efficiency, they're looking for quick information, so they used to chat with the bot and be done with it. So from a functional perspective, very good. We were trying to build that emotional part of it, so slight disappointment there, but nevertheless, that's the observation. 24/7 is expensive. Over here, 24/7 gives you access to a wider user base. Given a choice with a human-to-human, people actually prefer to talk rather than chat. So most of them said, here's my phone number, can you come back, blah, blah, blah. When it came down to the human-to-bot, it was people actually preferred, whilst they could type in and they could click as well, people actually preferred to click rather than click on the rich elements rather than type it in. As I said, personalization always wins. If you can make the more personalized you can make it, the better would be the needles in terms of the metrics. And if you are able to put in visual elements and you're able to kind of bring in some element of humor, we saw a higher uptake in terms of the CSAT. In terms of what's next for us, obviously we're kind of going to go into wider use cases in terms from a job boards perspective. We are already live with a couple of use cases on WhatsApp and on SMS. We are kind of experimenting with some other channels as well. And then from a quality of conversation perspective, we've been actually since mid last year, we've been experimenting with GPT-3, now GPT 3.5 Turbo. And then since yesterday, GPT-4 has happened as well. So we'll see what we do with that. But we've been running a number of POCs on the large language models. Obviously, some known challenges that exist in terms of there's an element of hallucination that kind of comes in. How do you detect that? How do you work with that? Data privacy, which I think is more or less mitigated now because now both OpenAI and Microsoft again allow you to kind of toggle in terms of not getting your data trained on with their models. The prompt injection part of it, we don't know. We know it's a problem that exists. We don't know how to mitigate it as yet. We're thinking of some POCs in terms of output validation. We're talking about there's an element of bias. We'll probably talk about it in the next panel, but there's an element of bias which is built in the data that exists. And obviously there is an element of, we've all seen the models perform in the data that they have been trained on. We've not seen the models perform once it has been trained on our specific data. So fine-tuned performance based on our data, we don't have a view on that. But this is what the future holds for us. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom. That was fantastic. We do have a minute before we get into the panel if anyone's got any questions for Som. Any questions, or should we save it for the panel? I've got a few questions, but I think I might save it for the panel. Let's save it for the panel. Fair enough. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Som Nakbizboz.